hello and welcome to the Soul Sync podcast, my lovely listener. It's lovely to have you here. I'm a medium amongst many other things, and you're in the place here on the Soul Sync where we explore everything from consciousness, the soul's journey, mediumship, the spirit world, and sort of everything there and in between, really. My mediumship recently has been kind of unfolding at the speed of knots in some ways, because I have really started to understand more deeply how the spirit world really communicate with me. My clairvoyance has always been very strong, and it's just kind of taken on a bit of a journey in itself recently. And I have done some readings where sort of new things are happening as well, without going into like loads of detail right now. I'll have to do a whole separate episode on that. But I've got a beautiful soul for you today on this episode, and I learnt so much from this episode, and it's really made me, in the days that followed this recording and even now whilst talking to you, really look at my mediumship in a very different way. So you're going to be having the privilege today of listening to Colin Bates, Reverend Colin Bates even. He is a medium, he is a teacher, and he is an all-round lovely soul, let me tell you that. So we discuss topics such as the creative force, kind of understanding that we are the power itself, not seeking to become it, moving from head to heart in spiritual practice. We also talked about sensitivity, because us sensitive souls, the world can be very overwhelming now, especially the world of technology, mobile phones. And we talked about how mediums, even sort of intuitives and empaths, kind of really navigate life. You know, I know that myself, I need a lot of sort of time alone in some ways. Like I love just being in my own company. I didn't always know, oh my God, in my 20s, I absolutely hated it. So much so that I would just try and seek and find love and, look outside of myself for that. But we also talked about something interesting. Whenever I do a week of mediumship, my kind of, if it's an intense course, what happens is I go into like a Sainsbury's or whatever, and it is so overwhelming because my sensitivity has been heightened all week because of communicating with the spirit world. So we talked about sensitivity and balance and the importance of balancing spiritual sensitivity with grounded physical life, managing empathic overwhelm through separation and devotional practice. We also talked about some of Colin's rituals, which I've actually started copying one of them actually. Very good idea. So you're going to learn a lot from this episode, and I think it will make you reflect, and it will definitely be one to leave you feeling good. This is my conversation with Reverend Colin Bates, titled You Are the Power, the Shift from Striving to Surrender. Reverend Colin Bates, welcome to the Soul Sync podcast.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, we're honoured to have you here. It's been much anticipated, Colin. I've been getting very excited over this is our third time lucky or something, isn't it, actually?
Yeah, 3 times a charm.
3 times a charm. Well, I must say, from the very beginning, I've been very fortunate for our paths to have crossed and to been onto one of your courses, and to watch you work and teach and be so influenced, by spirit in everything you're kind of saying and doing is so beautiful. So I was really excited to have you on because it really moved me and it really touched me, Colin, when I spent time with you, because, you really teach from the heart, and that just comes through in the bucket load. So I want to get as much value for the dear listener as we can into this time together. So before the show, I asked you, some topics that you may want to talk about today. And one of the things that you mentioned was about the creative force. And I wanted to go straight into that. And what do you mean by that, Colin?
Well, first and foremost, what a joy it is to have this time together.
And I've just gone straight on to questions, Colin. I've not even allowed you to...
What a joy it is to be here, but also to start a wonderful conversation with that wonderful, what I consider to be the beginning, the middle, and the end of everything. Because you cannot be where that power is not. And it is really intrinsically the heart of everything, you see. And for me, when I move into whether it's teaching or even within my personal life, I always move into the presence of the heart. And the presence of the heart for me will always be infinitely connected to the divine source of all life. And when we speak about mediumship and all the many facets of the power itself, people always seem to be struggling a little bit and striving for something and to reach for something, when really what they need to embrace is that they are, in essence, the power itself, and that mediumship, the mediumistic ability, is of the soul, and therefore it's a part of you and I and of everything that we are. And of course that divine spark, the creative force in whom we move and have our very being, is at the heart of everything, you see. For the spirit world exists within that love. And what I try and bring in my teaching or in my lectures is this wonderful realization that it's who you are. And you see, the physical mind, God love it, you can't live with it, but you can't live without it sometimes. And that the great battle is believing that you have this extraordinary connection within the power of all life, and that the spirit world is a part of you and I that is already existing and has already existed. You see, for it's the power from whence we come, it's the light in which we exist, and it is the continuation of that wonderful relationship that we build as we move forward from this world, which then brings us into a communication. But you see, there are many pathways that lead to the understanding of it, and each one is right. Because it's that which touches the heart and brings us into the realization of the power of the earth, the sea, the sky, and of eternity, you see. For it's the very air that you breathe. It creates, it enfolds us within that love. And it's only the physical mind that prevents us from surrendering to the absolute reality of it. So I always say, think not with the mind, but feel with the heart and know with the soul, for it will guide you into that place of embracing the presence and the power of who we are. And of course, the limitless potential of moving into those higher states of consciousness, which are also connected to the mind and are reached through the physical mind. But as soon as you start to focus upon devotion, as soon as you open the heart to the realms of infinite possibility, all of a sudden we are uplifted, we are strengthened, and we are reminded of this extraordinary power. And it is all created through love, through the radiating of those thoughts and of the energy of the heart. It is the spiritualization, really, of the soul, which is the greatest journey.
It's do you know the thing with mediumship, and when you're saying that, you talk with such simplicity, because yes, we're not trying to be something we're not. We are the power. And you know, even on my journey, I got so lost in techniques from different teachers that the whole time I was just in my head. I wasn't in my heart at all. But it takes a long time to get to that place. And why does it take us so long to get to something that we've already been? And we were like that from birth, you know.
Well, we are, you see, and I think it's very much an individual journey, because there is a point of awakening. And that point of awakening happens for many at different times within their lives. For me, I was very fortunate that my mother dragged me to a spiritualist church when I was only 15. And I was this punk rocker with all this blonde hair and everything hanging out where it shouldn't. And she dragged me because she said, I don't want to go alone, but I want to possibly have this relationship with my father that I didn't get to say goodbye. So I just went, you see, and I sat there thinking, oh dear, what's this? And I was enthralled by it. And we stayed going together all of the time that she was still able to go, you see. And it was this love, you see. It was this incredible welcome of people, of places, and this opportunity to listen to people. To speak of the power of the spirit, of the energy of life, you see. But for far too long, mediumship was taught through the mind. You've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to create this, you've got to create that. And this incredible list, well, you know, I forget yesterday half the time, so it wasn't really good for me, that one. And then as I started to unfold, you see, I then started to have these incredible teachers that used to speak of the power, that used to speak of surrendering and embracing the essence and the presence of the power, that will then start to guide and inspire us. Rather than, this is what you've got to do, this is what you've got to seek, this is what you've got to find, you see. And because I'd always had, even from a small age, this sense of, I don't want to say godliness, because I don't think I've ever been godly, but this sense of embracing a presence of something that is beyond me and yet is part of me. For instance, I've always loved to sit in sacred places and feel the essence and the presence of everything that is there. You see, and what we learn within mediumship is the presence of you and I, as it opens the doorway, we then begin to experience on another level.
When you were teaching, because I think mediumship is one of the most complicated things, because I don't, obviously, Colin, don't teach it, so I can say that now. But when I look at the art of being able to teach it, because I've come across teachers where it just wasn't working for me and I just couldn't understand why. What is your aim when you're teaching? How do you get people to unfold and identify that, and something that's so personal and feels different to each one of us? How do you even go about doing that?
Well, that is the key, you see, in the words that you've just used. It is individual, it is personal to each person who is seeking, because really we are the seekers and the searchers. We are seeking to understand life. We are seeking to embrace our own personal place within this world and to really form our own truth within it. So what I always say to people is, no two people will ever do it quite the same. And that what you have to do is to really start to learn to know and to understand the presence of your own power, if you will. And that mediumship itself is often very subtle. And that there are times when we really miss so much of it because we're so focused here on trying to get it right that you don't give yourself permission to really experience. And what I always just say to everyone is, now, what I want you to do is more than anything. So if I stand up and do an introduction when I'm having, you know, the larger groups, I say, the first thing I want you to do is to give yourselves permission to experience. not to limit the limitless potential of who you are. You see, and the fact that you're here, you've already succeeded, because there is something within you that is calling you to begin to explore and embrace the naturalness of this wonderful ability that you have, that covers and touches so many different facets, because it does. It unfolds, unfolds, and unfolds, and unfolds. But really, I think the greatest step forward is to believe that you can. I mean, really, I am the first sacred words ever spoken unto the universe. I am that. To believe that you hold the sacredness of that power within you, and that it is who you are. It is not something you are trying to be. It is actually something that you need to embrace and recognize as a part of you. And of course, we are indoctrinated into this physical world through the physical mind. But it's very much to do with moving into that joyfulness that then moves and creates a greater level of consciousness. And I always say, now, what we're going to do today is really just start to listen to the whispers of heaven. And of course, what a lot of people do is they sit down and expect it to be there. Well, it can't be, because you're still immersed into this physical life and moment. So we go through certain processes and experiences that then take us into this higher state of consciousness, where we then begin to experience on another level. So in a way, the power of the will, you see, because a lot of people get tied up with all these, am I open, am I closed? Well, you can never be either, because if you were closed, you'd be dead. You'd be in the Elysium fields. So your own energetic system is in a constant state of change: earth, air, fire, and water. And you will your power into being. It's like you open the doorway to a magical experience, because it is magical. It's beautiful. Heavens to Betsy, you're speaking with a living person who is as real as you and I. And I think sometimes we forget that, you know, when people say this, this, and this, you know, I'm speaking with a living presence. And of course, God is a living presence. The force, the power of creation is so much a part of the mediumistic faculty, you see, because when you open to the wider sense of mediumship, you have got the power of prophecy, which is ascending of the power itself. And sometimes in the purity of mediumship, you just open your mouth and you start saying something that you know not from whence it comes, but it brings a blessing of insight into the lives of others. And when you trust that within yourself, you see, you begin to immerse yourself within it. You know, you have the power of the prophets, the mystics, the seekers, the seers, the second sight. All these different wonderful terms are natural states of being. And I think what we learn is to recognize them. You see, to recognize that when you move into that state of experience, that actually the power already knows what you need. You see, say, for instance, somebody comes to see us. Say you're coming to see me. I'll sit within the quiet, I'll move into the presence of the heart, and I will expand that love to the power itself and say, be with me. Jason's coming to see me at 10. You see, now before you come to see me, you've done the same thing in your own way. You've said, please help me. You've sent your thoughts to the other world. The heart knows what it needs, you see. The other world knows, because the fact that somebody's left this world, it doesn't mean they're going to go off and forget us. They still have not only the memories of that which existed within life, but they also know what is happening to us. And of course, part of the proof of survival is the proof of the continuation of life, that there is a knowledge of what has happened since somebody moved into the other world.
You're making me... It's such a beautiful way to put it. And I'm going to start... I was writing down there, I'm going to be doing some of that. I'm moving into my heart and into my power. I love that. Because I struggle, Colin, I must admit, with... It's even taken me a very long time to even accept that I'm a medium.
Yes.
I've spent so long even doubting that. But when you was just talking, it was making me think, when we go back to the spirit world and we are a soul, and our soul has likely had many previous lives, and do we go back as Colin goes back as Colin, or do you have that personality? Because what life are you when you go back? Or am I asking an impossible question, Colin?
No, not at all. Because I am I and you are you, and as we are now, we will never be again. But we are unique to this one experience. But I also believe that there are other experiences that connect to the facets of the soul that may even be existing simultaneously, you see. And that the presence of this world and this life and experience, that is why you and I will always know each other within the realms of the spirit. And that those that connect to us will always connect to us until you reach that point where the soul itself no longer has a need within those connections. And then we assimilate, of course, into the power itself. But that doesn't come into being until there are many phases of the evolving of the soul that still continue within the spirit world as they continue within this life, you see, because we are influenced by how we are born, the people, the family, the environment, the society in which we are created, you see. But then you reach a point where there is this awakening of seeking and searching for that which is right for you. And then you build and create.
So we it's fascinating hearing you explain that. So we have the people connected to us that we still feel that we need at that time. So, if we've got a family member or someone we love, but then you describe this moment when we go back into the power. That's really, my brain can't even comprehend it, Colin.
Well, if you look at the journey of the heart, and the journey of the heart is that there is a physical aspect of you and I that is dominating everything. But then you move into a time when you're seeking and searching. And then you move into a time of finding and embracing, which then connects us very much to the spiritual aspects, the devotional aspects. But ultimately, you will move into an embracing of everything, where you live within the love and the joy of the heart, you see. So it's going through different phases of life, of existence, you see. So there is this sense of, look at where you are now and look at where you were maybe 5 or 7 years ago. Very different.
Oh, blimey, very different.
You go from this, where am I? Who am I? What am I seeking? To something that inspires and empowers you. And don't you think for one second that that's because it just happens by a natural process. No, no, no. I believe there is a guiding force and influence that actually, can come into our life, be it for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and point the way. You see, something crossed your pathway that said, oh, actually, there is so much more. You see.
It's funny you say that, even, because you've leading me on to something, because recently I started to see some signs and synchronicities looking back at my life, and people who've just come into my life for this bizarre moment, and then it's been, and looking back now, and it's all sort of happened in the last year that I've started to question something, and it started to make me have a question, which I still haven't really got to the bottom of, which is how much are the spirit world able to influence our lives down here? Because we hear about signs, synchronicities, you know.
Yes. I mean, there are times and moments when there can actually be intervention. I remember when I was 6 years old and I was walking to the village school, and I went across the road and I physically heard a voice scream, "Stop." And 2 seconds later, a lorry came round the corner and I'd have been dead.
Oh, bloody hell.
So there are moments when the universe steps in and can bring knowledge and insight into certain situations that can change the course of life and can bring us, I believe, into a greater knowledge and understanding. And that can also be with people, because I believe that there is a time before we come unto this life and world where we exist within the spirit, and those that guide us within this world, and bearing in mind that not everybody takes that real time to develop that aspect of spirituality and of mediumship. But there are people that come into our lives at certain time and say, I will be there for you at that time. And I will help to show you the way, you see, because, you know, one thing that we have within sensitivity is that you will always doubt the physical emotional balance. I'll guarantee it. And that you will question at times your existence. And it's one thing that we all have in common. And even to the point that there may be those odd moments when you think, well, I don't want to be here anyway. But that's because the soul has a recognition of the other world. Because as the medium, you are the mediator between heaven and earth, and you have 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot in earth, you see. And this is why you must always follow, for me, that devotional pathway, because the devotional pathway will always bring you back into that stability within life, you see, and to begin to realize that actually there is this duality, and that you have to work on that inner balance, you see. And I think within the teaching of everything that we do, that should be the paramount. It should certainly be part of that process, that we actually teach people how to work within their own sensitivity and to begin to realize that sensitivity is a part of who they are. But because of this facet of being of the soul, that you will always need to work on that balance.
When you talk about the balance between the two, being in the physical, so you're talking about being in our everyday lives, and then being, you know, when you say being in the other world, you mean, you know, being in one's heart.
Yes. You see, because sensitivity, we are not physically designed to be within heightened states of sensitivity 24/7. It will drive you nuts eventually.
Yes.
No, seriously. The amount of people that come to me because they cannot exist physically anymore. They cannot go into places where there are people. They cannot go into shops because they feel overwhelmed by the presence and the essence of others, which is a sign that the sensitivity has gone out of balance completely, you see. When we open our hearts and we move into that time of sensitivity, you see, what is important is that you remember that you bring yourself back into the sense of the physical life, and that your own mental awareness comes back to take dominance when you're finished, you see. And if you don't do that, you know, you will start to find that you become overwhelmed. I mean, when you work mediumistically, you're touching people's lives. You are immersing yourselves within their emotions. You're being touched by the presence of the spirit, which has its own thoughts, wishes, and dreams. When you move into a time of healing, you are touching all of that within those that you heal, and that you need to take time afterwards to just embrace the presence, to surround all that with love, and then just to let it go and to move back into the gentle presence of this life. The pathway of the sensitive is not an easy one, because there is the power of the empath, where you are influenced by the thoughts and the energy of others. You've got the energy of the world, and Lord knows what's happening in the world at the moment. So therefore, moving into the heart and the positivity of prayer, of peace. You see, the power of the mind is infinite. You see, through a single thought, you can connect infinitely, not only within the universal power, but you also have the ability to bring help, support, healing into all of the lives of those who are seeking. You see, because that's really what prayer is. It's acknowledging this divine universal essence of life and adding to its great work through your own love. For when you move into that love, all of a sudden you feel uplifted, and you know the power's heard you. You see. Yes.
Go on, go on, Colin.
No, go. Because really, it is so much a part of what we do. You see, and this is why, with many people who move into the unfoldment of mediumship, don't realize they're there. You see, because it can be inspirational, because everybody will experience it a little bit differently. You see,
I can relate to that with what you're saying about the sensitivity. It's, you know, I find that I just like my own company a lot. And the more and more I've developed my mediumship, the more and more I find that sometimes I have to push myself out the house, and I think, Jason, come on now. But, you know, another thing is, after I do a course as well, Colin, I can't go in a Sainsbury's or anything. You
totally.
know, it's
You've got separation.
Yeah.
You've got to have that time of separation. And if you take this into the ancient world, separation is the word that comes. When you look at the oracle, such as the Parthia, the oracle at Delphi, she's totally separate. When you look at the wise woman of the village, I mean, it was particularly a feminine trait, although, of course, there were the masculine people that also followed it. They had to live separate, you see, because they were influenced and overwhelmed by the presence of others. And you will find through the unfolding journey of your mediumship that you will be not only drawn to the quiet, but you will seek times of seclusion where you can be at one with the power. And of course, that's where these wonderful techniques of meditation, contemplation, sitting in the power find their origin. You know, in the temples of Egypt, they used to sit for years within the silence first to become aware of the power itself and to build that union. When I started developing at that tender age of 16, I was invited into an awareness circle first. Nothing to do with the spirit. It was about sitting within the meditative state to feel and sense the presence of the power before you then moved forward into seeking the union of the spirit. And really, we do everything back-ended now because everybody wants to speak to grandma, but nobody wants to speak to themselves.
Well, yeah.
It really is. And so what I do is, when you look at any of my mentorships or the teachings or anything, it's always mediumship and spiritual development, which of course are my greatest courses. And so the duality, you see, is so important because one will create and sustain the other, and it will bring you into a greater self-realization, if you will. And, you know, not everybody is destined to be a medium. Heavens, why would we? But what we are destined to do is to begin this great self-realization that you are a spiritual being within a physical life, that you are infinitely connected to this universal power. And many people go on to use that in their work, in their lives, you see, because the greatest mediumship is in life. You know, part of it is standing on a rostrum.
Yes.
Part of it, but only a small part. The greatest work you'll ever do as a medium is when you smile at someone and say, I'm here for you. What do you need? You see. And that's really how mediumship works naturally, because you find yourself connecting to someone, or you're sitting somewhere, then all of a sudden somebody starts talking to you about something that touches their heart within healing and even within the spirit. And then you find these words coming that just support, strengthen, and encourage them to find that peace within, you see. And of course, within my work, the majority of it is people contacting me just to speak to me. You know, we have something called ministerial talks. It sounds very grand, but it's just a chat. And I say to them, just give us a call and let's just talk about, you know, what you're going through and what you're experiencing. And I always do that. I always have done, you see.
It's beautiful.
Because sometimes it's just about opening your heart to somebody who will listen. You see, and in the listening, it starts to bring, you know, it may be resolution, it may be inspiration, it may be enlightenment, you see, but you cannot be where that love is not. And I always say to people, you know, in all my years, and Lord knows there's been many of them, there has never been a time when the spirit world has not been there, but there has been infinite times when I have not.
It's very true, isn't it?
Because it is a constant presence, it is a constant power, but it's a relationship, you see. There's that wonderful hymn, which is just God of the granite and the rose, soul of the sparrow and the bee, the mighty tide of being flows through all creation, Lord, to thee. It's everything. You see, and however you choose to acknowledge that within yourself, it's right. Well, you see, there are many pathways to truth, to realization, but each one will lead you to that great mystery, for there is only one source.
What's keep coming into my awareness as you're saying that is, in those times we can't feel the spirit, and you know, I've had times where I sit there and I think, oh, I'm not feeling anything. At those moments, it's not that they're not there; it's we're in our heads. That is the problem.
Yes, absolutely. And what you have to begin to remember is that the spirit world is a different dimension of existence. We speak of this world as an etheric world because it is. We are etheric beings. And then you can speak of the subtle bodies of the etheric system: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Well, what happens at that moment of transition from one existence to another is that there is a quickening of the etheric body, you see. So when we move to communicate, when we move to meditate, There is a rising of our consciousness, but it is a quickening of the etheric system. So you start to become aware in another way, you see. But if the mind is full of yesterday, today, tomorrow, which of course it is constantly, you have to first start to really learn to move into more of a stillness. Harry Edwards was an extraordinary man. He used to speak about the mirror of the mind, which is a lake that reflects everything that it sees, but it is so easily ruffled by our own thoughts and the energy of others. So it's learning how to find that stillness, and we'll all do it a little bit differently. I have my ritual. I have my frankincense. I have my blue lotus oil that Eileen Davis sent me the biggest bottle you've ever seen in the whole wide world. And she said it will keep you forever young. And I just put a bit on.
Oh, Colin, you need to send me a bit of that, I think, actually. I could do a bit of your oil.
I mean, frankincense has been used from millennia, because when you look at frankincense, it induces states of religious euphoria. It brings us back to memories of that which have been, which is why the churches always used it, because it then brought everybody's mind into a total oneness of focusing upon the creative force.
It's interesting because I didn't know that about frankincense, but I use it because it for some reason it seems to make me get in that state much easier, but I wasn't aware that was what it was necessarily known for.
Yes, and I use the anointing oil, which is frankincense, myrrh and cinnamon. And so you create the atmosphere. Now, the atmosphere is really important. So when I'm seeing someone, I will sit first, like I was having a lovely conversation with you today. So I just sat down, I have all my things around me here, and sat and spoke to the power and said, well, just inspire me, however you wish, just guide it within the words, because that's how I teach, I always have done. But then I use these different oils, if you will. I open the heart center. I start to build that love and then radiate it into more of an auric. Does that sound marvelous? An auric awareness, because everything is perceived within the auric field, not the physical body. Energetically, emotionally, the central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system is connected to the auric field, you see. And so you move your awareness into this greater awareness. So the physical life and world is moving into a quietness, but then through this expansion of awareness, you're starting to become aware in another way. The feeling, the sensing, the hearing, and the knowing. And of course, the knowing is really one of the strongest senses of this age. Always be connected to your feeling. What do I feel? What do I sense? What do I see? What do I feel? What do I know? And the knowing can touch all of those senses or none of them. Trust. And what you can do to empower that is people, time and places. You know, you're doing something, someone comes into your mind, don't just dismiss it, phone them up. Find out why. One of the most natural forms of communication is when a memory comes of a time and a moment, and it's the spirit world saying, I'm here. Signs and synchronicity, you see. You know, and so often we see something that reminds us, songs, oh my goodness, you know, the words of songs as they come into our mind, marvellous way of communication.
I'd never thought of it like that, but as you're saying it, it's making me think of a few thoughts I've had recently that have just been very obscure thoughts that just came into my awareness about family members.
Yes, well.
And yeah.
You know, it's because they no longer have a physical voice, you see, unless, of course, you're like Estelle Roberts and you can just manifest all these wonderful voices. Do you know one day she demonstrated to 8,000 people with Helen Hughes in Sheffield? 8,000 people. And Helen Hughes was the most amazing clairaudient. And in one demonstration, she gave like 48 first names, second names, and addresses and all these sorts of things. And there's transcripts of her demonstrating. But Estelle Roberts was extraordinary. She used to demonstrate to up to 5,000 people in the Royal Albert Hall.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, because she had every single gift going, manifestation, physical mediumship, the people who sat in the first few rows could hear the whispers of heaven all around her getting ready to speak because she had direct voice mediumship. So you could hear it. You see, our own clairaudience is subjective. It can be objective, but it's quite rare, you see.
Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking of them there with 8,000 people with the hands going up. How would you even manage that?
Well, because they knew. And I mean, if you look at those transcripts of Helen Hughes, to say, I'm coming, and I was very fortunate as a child because I saw and studied with Gordon Higginson, Ursula Roberts, Ivy Northridge, Swamiji. She was just beautiful. And they had this most amazing ability and trust with what they did, you see. And within these transcripts of Helen Hughes, she said, I'm coming to the second row from the back and I need to speak to somebody who knows Mr. Thompson. And it goes from there, you see.
That's crazy, yeah.
So you've got the direction, but you've got this absolute evidence, you see, that then brings into it. Lovely Gerard Smith was extraordinary with that. And he would go through all this and he said, oh, and your mother's name is right at the end. And of course, with Gordon Higginson, astounding people. Albert Best. My goodness, the best of the best, we used to call him.
There'll be people listening to this scribbling down. I will put all these names in this show, though.
Even the numbers on banknotes, he was known for. And whenever he used to go and do a demonstration, he would go to the churchyard first and people would say, well, why are you doing that? He said, I'm just visiting my clients before I start, you see. And it does work, you know. I work a lot in Sweden and I always walk among the lovely gravestones and then look at the names on the gravestones and what's written there. And then I remember once doing it and saying to the spirit world, now I'm looking at all of you. Now give me the name. And then lo and behold, I was working, it was in the demonstrator right reading, and I gave the name and she said, oh yes, that's my family name.
Fascinating, isn't it?
It's becoming familiar with something, you see. And it's like somebody will say, well, I never get names. Well, you never will. Because you just dismissed yourself before you've even started. Start becoming familiar with different things. You see, awareness and perception, which is the foundation of everything. Start to look enough, pay attention, you see.
I think I'm guilty, Colin, of sometimes, right, now I'm in medium mode, now I'm connecting to spirit, now I'm in real life mode, and sometimes I'm not letting them blend enough together, but... You know, that's something that I've started to think, you're being silly there. You know, the spirit can help you in every way.
Well, you know, when you smile to heaven, heaven will smile back. When you just send that thought, what you're doing is you're willing that moment into being, you see. Compassion, which is the highest form of service. How may I help you? How may I be of service? Well, of course, the spiritual life is one of service to all, to mankind. So when I see somebody, and I've just gone through my little process or ritual, whichever you want to call it, I then move my thoughts and energy into becoming one with the energy of those that I'm speaking to. And then I send their thoughts and energy to heaven and I say, how may I help you? you see. And if you're somebody who really suffers from nerves, am I, can I, should I, am I good enough? When you move into compassion of the heart, it takes you beyond yourself. And as it takes you beyond yourself, you do not question yourself. You're no longer aware of yourself. You're stepping into the power of service. You see. And I know it within myself. If I'm aware of being Colin, I am never as good as when I am at one within those moments. You see. And there was a wonderful, the fish in the water. So as a medium, we are the fish, but your mediumship is the water. When you move into the sacredness of the power, you become the water. You're no longer the fish. And it's that moving beyond mind, beyond self, to this infinite freedom, you see. And I'm very fortunate where I live, although you can't see it. There's big windows in front of me and all these wonderful trees. And I sit and I feel and I sense the creative force within all living things. And I just put my heart and I move my thoughts to be at one for no reason other than to simply be. And that's something that I feel we lose a little bit, that it's not about this, it's not about this, it's not about this. It's about your own personal connection, you see, within the power of all life. You know, I am at one, you see. And it took me a very, very long time to really step into that sense of peace. And you know, the situations of life sometimes are not easy with all of us. It doesn't matter, you know, who we are. But if you can move into the compassion of the heart, if you can just bring that love element into it, you know, there was a wonderful saying, I love you, but I do not understand you. You can then go in a way beyond it, which is really where I'm working now. I'm trying. You know, I don't say that I always succeed, but what I do is I look at something through that element and just say, well, I cannot physically change what is, but I can bring myself into that compassion that just says, I am at peace with you and I refuse to take on your emotion or that moment. But we're all different, you see. We all deal with things in a different way. And I think really the purpose of everything that we do is to bring in this realization.
Making me think as well that mediumship, you know, I've always been very sensitive, but recently I'm finding myself looking at most things through a compassionate lens. You know, if someone cuts me up in the road, don't worry, Colin, they still probably get a profanity in a moment. But even, you know, when people are, you know, exuding certain behaviours or acting in a certain way, you know, I found myself really looking at why, what's causing that, you know, and it's hard in the world I live in, and because a lot of my life is live in the sales industry, which is very, you know, ego driven. It's, you know, that environment, and you know, that's why when I get home, I want to stay away, because I'm like, get me away from this. I've had all day of the land of the ego, which I'm probably on tested time from Colin. I'm a sales veteran now in these days. But it's, you know, there is something about that, the softening that seems to happen. So I can relate to that.
And I think perhaps to realise that there is a duality. There's a duality within life, because we have to be what the world says we have to be, such as within the working environment. You see, but then also to remember that we are also part of something which is much greater, you see, and your light shines from you, and you don't get that type of light just by not looking or believing or creating or celebrating, you see. And so have courage and be kind is the most wonderful sentence. And I love it. You see, loving kindness, you see, is the most incredible gift and ability, you know, and you know, there are many pathways within this life and world. And when you find one that touches your heart in a certain way, it doesn't matter if nobody else follows it or believes it. I mean, I'm a committed spiritualist, but I used to run spiritualist services in a Quaker meeting house. And I thought, well, I'll pop along and I'll see them all. And, you know, I had the most wonderful time because you sit within the presence of the power. And then they either read from a book a passage that's connected to that, or they're inspired and just stand up and speak. So, you know, it's, I think really more and more we are universalists. I like that because we honor and take from many different aspects that can inspire us, support us, and strengthen us. Because, I mean, if you look at the spiritual teachers of this world and you look at those within the spirit world, they are from every aspect, you see. And we are the seekers and the searchers of truth. We find and honor that within us. And you know, in the simplicity of that, can you imagine what a revelation and revolution that would create? That if more people just stopped for a moment, and that regardless of colour or creed belief, we are all created of that one source. Therefore, that which we do unto each other, we do to everyone. And that loving
the world
kindness
would be very different.
Can create this wonderful sense, you see, of family, really, because we are the family of the world. You know,
I hope we can get to more of that, Colin. I really do. But we need to get our head out of our phones and our heads. With the world of distractions we live in now, it's a tricky world.
I honestly believe in that, in what you've just said, totally, because mankind, and I kid you not, is more and more creating this unique connection to the God of Google.
Yes.
And is starting to lose the naturalness of the power. And rather than seeking to find our own personal answers, I mean, I'm as guilty as the next one, is popping in and getting it to tell you, rather than you seeking the inspiration on that personal level. And that really has concerned me for some time.
Well, we're not, you know, we're surrendering our power more and more, and with AI and the world we're in now, we're even having the computer think for us. You know, we're not even having to do anything. I put into my chat GBT every day, Colin, send me this email to a client, make this better. Very efficient, though, that is.
Well, it is. I keep calling it A1. I said, all this A1 business and the Wonder Web, you know, and I have brought myself into the 20th century, when the 21st is it, or the 20th, I have no idea where we are. But in acknowledging, you know, all that is happening within this world, we must never lose sight of the spirit of life, of the wonder and the goodness of this world, because it is a beautiful world. And while one bird continues to sing, there will always be hope. I think that was Emerson. And so you've got to just, you know, acknowledge that, yes, we live in this physical world. Yes, we have to do what we have to do. But we are actually part of so much more There is infinite possibility in all that we do.
We are limitless in our potential.
Absolutely. And I defy anyone to say anything different.
I've started thinking, Colin, that, you know, if anything is possible, we are limitless beings. The spirit world, you know, have many levers at their disposal. You know, what's to even say that mediumship can't evolve in, you know, what's possible? You know, I often ask myself that. I used to be a magician in an earlier life, Colin, when I was about 16.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. I used to do stage magic. And then it started going through my mind recently that, you know how Derren Brown does that kind of stuff? Maybe proving, you know, life after death in a way which people can't dispute in, you know, a platform environment. You know, the things that go through my head, Colin, ADHD brain, you wouldn't even believe. But it started making me think, you know, what if that's possible? What if the spirit world wanted to partake in this, you know? So I just want to say, Colin, it's been so lovely to have you come onto this podcast. I feel like I've got so many things here I still wanted to talk to you about. And I got 5 points and we haven't even moved beyond point 1. Because
bless you. But
thank you for coming on.
I've just loved it, and I've loved catching up with you.
Yeah,
and,
you
and
too.
I could not wish you greater success, honestly, in everything that you do. But there's one thing just that I would like to leave as a thought.
Please do.
And that really is individual belief and faith. You see, because people still have that need within them to know that we are loved. And to know that death is not an ending, but it is a greater story. It is a greater continuation. Because when we live and when we love, my dear one, we love forever, you see. And that stays with us. And what we learn is to just move it into a space of the heart and keep it there with us, you see. And I think with mediumship, sensitivity and all the different facets that it comes into being, one of the greatest steps that we ever take is when we say to ourselves, I am the medium. That you carry within you the sacredness and the trust of that power. And that it's not something you're seeking to be. It's something that you need to recognize as being a part of the core essence and presence of who you are, which ultimately is one of love. You see, because it is the greatest power of the universe. It is the God force, however you choose to perceive it to be. Because there are many people, even in this world now, that when you mention the word God, they stand back because it's had so many connotations in the way they've been brought up, in what you're to believe, etc., etc. So that's why I always talk about the creative force, the power of all life. It's the same. You see, but a lot of people that are being born onto this world now, within those generations, are demanding freedom. And really, that is why spiritualism has so much to offer, because it is not dogma, it is not creed. It is saying, really, this is a religion that is based upon fact. It is based upon love.
And truth.
And truth, of course, ultimately. And I think if I can bring that into those that I touch, and Lord knows how many there is over the years, you know, and I have people write to me and said, you said this to me 20 years ago.
I bet you remember every letter, Colin, like it was yesterday.
And how wonderful it was. And, you know, for long enough, I used to have this big wooden box where I had every single card that everybody had ever given me, with all of these wonderful signatures of
a box of love.
A box of love, you see. And I would just open it and just touch it and feel that goodwill and that strength and that memory. I remember there was the most wonderful tutor called Muriel Tennant, incredibly well known at the college, and she worked there for many, many years. And she moved into a time of slow declining towards leaving this world. And she received over 1,000 cards from all those who remembered her. And she looked at those cards and she said, well, do you know, I couldn't have done so bad, could I? You see.
Beautiful.
And you never quite know what seeds you plant within the hearts of others. And people will always remember how you made them feel. And that is what I try and live by, you see.
Do you know that's what I try and live by as well, actually.
Yes, because the world of the spirit is a world of wonder. It is a world of life. It is not one of death, because there is no death, you see. And when you're talking to someone and you open that doorway for them, you can see light, life, and hope come back into someone's eyes. Mm-hmm. That is when it becomes life-changing and life-affirming. And I always say to people, never, ever give up. Because you could be this close to that moment when everything comes together for you and that great symphony of the spirit begins to sing within you. You see, and you never know quite when that moment comes. Come it does and come it will. You see. And, you know, when we are up against a frustration, you know, try not to work within it because it will only create more frustration. Just take a deep breath, you see. And what I do is I say, well, today isn't my day. Tomorrow will be better. You see.
Colin.
Well,
I love you. You're such a kind soul. You are such a brilliant articulator, and the way that you use analogies, you know, I could sit here for another hour, Colin. I'm ready to go.
Bless you. Well,
thank you for coming on.
Just have to say that I was so honoured when you just said, come and have a chat, you see, because I remember people and I will remember you.
And Colin, I'm honoured that you've come on. The feeling is very much mutual, so thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And, you know, to those of you who listen, my heart, my love, just, you know, whatever you're seeking, even if you don't know what you're seeking, know that the power is seeking you. And that you are loved. Now, Colin's absolutely right. You might not know what the bloody hell you're seeking at the moment, and something in this podcast might have just resonated and perhaps ignited your soul. Now, I absolutely love Colin. He is the most kindest, most beautiful, most lovely soul, and he really does talk from the heart there. I know on my own journey, I was seeking something. I didn't know what I was seeking, but I knew I was absolutely bloody unhappy at certain points in my life, and I knew there had to be more to life than this. I knew there had to be more to life than just being born, going through our lives, and then just one day dying, and it just didn't seem right to me. I thought, this doesn't make sense, and it absolutely didn't. And when I finally discovered what the truth actually is, it changed my life forever. But my lovely, darling listener, until next time, I'm Jason Paul. Thank you for coming to the Soul Sync. Lots of love.